Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're tackling a clash of cultures, and it's, I think, one of the most important stories shaping the future of work, of money, and creativity itself.
It really is.
You've got one of Netflix's biggest global franchises, right? Then you have the very real anxieties plaguing creative labor unions, and then colliding with all of it is the just, utterly undeniable rise of generative AI.
It's an explosive nexus of topics for sure. The source material you've pulled for this deep dive gives us a truly fascinating lens on it.
How so?
Well, because it starts with something that seems so small. A fan just spotting a tiny detail on a computer screen. And it uses that little crack to expose these massive tectonic shifts happening just beneath the surface of the entire entertainment industry.
Exactly. Our listeners shared this stack of material, and it's all centered around the accusations that were leveled at the creators of Stranger Things, the Duffer Brothers. And it shows how that one very specific, almost accidental incident just suddenly blew up into this broader, essential critique of AI's role across the entire entertainment world.
So our mission today is to synthesize all of these layers. We're going to meticulously unpack the accusation itself. We need to move past the hysteria and see what the likely truth actually is.
Right.
Then we have to explore the true, cold economic drivers. I mean, the capitalist imperative that's really pushing AI adoption in Hollywood.
And finally,
we have to examine the surprisingly and sometimes, disturbingly human element of Tinseltown power dynamics.
Right.
Things that might actually be the final point of resistance against full automation.
It's a huge scope.
It is.
Yeah.
We'll be synthesizing everything from failed promises of secret fan endings all the way to the calculated strategy of using synthetic actors.
It's a journey that really connects the sublime to the utterly cynical. And if we want to understand the current heat around this Stranger Things controversy, we have to start with the specific emotional context.
Yes.
Because the show's been a constant source of fan drama and mistrust, really, for a long time. Long before anyone started talking about ChatGPT, right?
That's absolutely vital context. The core problem, as the sources detail, is that the creators had already severely damaged their credibility with their own fan base.
Okay, so let's start there. What was the first major?
The first major wave of fan dissatisfaction was what the sources called the conformity gate hysteria.
Conformity gate.
Yeah. It stemmed from the ending of a previous season where a lot of the diehard fans felt the narrative it wasn't fulfilling, it wasn't authentic to the characters they loved.
That sounds like pretty typical fan dissatisfaction, though. I mean, that happens with every big show.
It does, but it escalated. It escalated because the creators hinted at a solution that just never, ever materialized.
Yeah.
They started actively promising what they called a super secret ending. They claimed this would satisfy these really demanding fan communities. But the goalposts for this supposed extra episode or, final scene, they just kept moving.
Which creates this cycle.
A perpetual state of anticipation followed by disappointment, which then, bred this really deep suspicion.
And these weren't vague promises, were they? The sources say they were very vague.
Oh, incredibly specific. Initially, the creators suggested this super secret episode, or seek, would appear on the 7th of a certain. When that date came and went with nothing, the sources note they just moved the date. They pushed it to the 12th of.
And what was the justification for that?
They claimed it would coincide with the release of a making-of documentary about Stranger Things. This documentary was supposed to, contextualize everything and make it all make sense.
But I'm guessing the outcome was the same.
The date came, the date passed. There was no super secret final episode. There was only the documentary.
Which ironically
became the vehicle for the next wave of controversy. So this whole cycle created a profound sense of having been misled, or frankly, just lied to. It left the fan base completely primed for the next major scandal.
Okay, so let's unpack this right, because this is the moment. This is where that initial disappointment over the end immediately transitions into the new and much more serious controversy centered on how the show was actually.
The fuse was already lit, absolutely. The emotional reservoir of goodwill, it had been totally depleted. It meant the fan base was already looking for reasons to doubt the creative integrity of the Duffer Brothers.
So let's detail this ChatGPT discovery. It sounds like it was almost an accidental piece of digital forensics performed by the audience themselves.
That is a perfect description. The entire uproar centered on that documentary we just mentioned, the one about the making of the show.
Right.
And fans, who the source material meticulously describes, they spotted something highly specific and seemingly insignificant on a computer screen. It was just captured briefly in the background of a shot.
And how did the sources characterize the intensity? I mean, who spots something like that?
The material describes them as possessing a truly astonishing level of eagle-eyed vigilance. It notes that their dedication to spotting these tiny details, to connecting these disparate visual elements, it was, and this is a quote, akin to the QAnon crowd.
Wow. Okay, so to be clear, the sources are not equating the beliefs here.
No, not at all. It's about the method. The sheer intensity, the focus, the dedication of the community to find the one true hidden fact. That's the comparison.
So what did this hyper-vigilant community spot on that computer screen in the background?
Open ChatGPT tabs.
Oh, no.
And not just one, multiple browser tabs, visibly displaying the interface for the large language.
And that led to?
What? Immediate, widespread, and explosive accusations across social media, across fan forums, the claim being that the Duffer Brothers were not writing Stranger Things Season 5 themselves, but may have been using AI to generate the script.
That is just explosive timing, especially when you factor in the context of these long-standing fan speculations about the show's quality declining anyway.
It didn't just add fuel to the fire. It was like throwing an accelerant on. You have to remember, there were already these deeply ingrained fan theories trying to explain what they perceived as a drop in narrative quality.
Right, and the most persistent one was, frankly, pretty bizarre.
It was. It was centered on the personal lives of the creators.
You're talking about the speculation around the divorce.
Yeah, there was this long-standing, completely unproven theory suggesting that one of the creators had gotten divorced and that his wife had actually been the uncredited ghostwriter for the highly praised early seasons.
A theory which I have to say is pretty out there.
It is, but the fan theory posited that this substandard quality of Series 5, in their view, was a direct result of her creative apps. So the ChatGPT tabs didn't just offer a new theory for the decline.
No, it offered a modern technological explanation that seemed to validate their overall suspicion that the creators had outsourced their creative labor somehow.
Exactly. The narrative they built was they lost the human ghostwriter, so they just replaced her with a digital one. It fit a pre-existing suspicion that the creative process was no longer genuinely human or original.
And the brutal irony here is just inescapable. This whole crisis is happening around the filming of 5, which was already delayed.
Delayed because of the WGA strike. The sources highlight how painful this irony.
It's almost cinematic.
It's cyclical irony. Season 5 filming was, in fact, delayed because of the writer's strike in Hollywood. And the Writers Guild of America was striking for fair pay, for residuals, and crucially for this conversation, for the regulation of AI and its usage in the creative process.
So they were literally on the picket lines fighting to protect themselves from this exact technological displacement.
Exactly. And here's where it gets so fascinating. You have this simultaneous, high-stake public struggle against AI and the potential private adoption of the very same technology by high-profile showrunners whose production was delayed because of that struggle.
That's a recipe for outrage.
It creates a tremendous amount of anger. The sources note this specifically. It's the intersection of die-hard fans who already felt betrayed and creative professionals who felt their collective action was being undermined by one of the industry's biggest hits.
It's the entire conflict in a single screen.
A perfect, brutal summary of the industry conflict in a single screen captured.
But we do have to move past the hysteria for a second and look at the likely reality versus the deep fear that the fans are projecting onto those tabs. It's so easy to assume the absolute worst scenario.
It is, but the analysis provided in the commentary suggests we need a dose of common sense here and a realistic view of what the technology can actually do right now.
So the idea that they're just typing "write me a scene" is probably not what's happening.
It's highly improbable that they were engaging in the most dramatic scenario, which is literally feeding in complex character data, asking ChatGPT to, write a scene where Dustin meets his mother, or generating full complex narrative dialogue for the final season.
And why is that improbable based on the technology itself? What are the limitations of these LLMs when you're dealing with something as complex?
The analysis suggests that while these models are superb at synthesizing existing information and producing prose, they currently struggle profoundly with the demands of long-form, serialized television.
You run into consistency issues.
Huge issues with structural consistency over many episodes, maintaining an established character voice and arc across multiple seasons, not just in a single prompt response. And most importantly, for dramatic writing, generating genuinely surprising yet earned character moments.
The aha moment, the twist that only makes sense in retrospect. AI would struggle with that human element of narrative tension.
Exactly right. LLMs, by their nature, predict the most likely next word based on their training data. Truly compelling drama often relies on the least likely next word that still somehow fits the character's internal logic.
That takes human creativity.
It takes human creativity, not probabilistic generation. So while the technology is powerful, the notion that ChatGPT wrote the entire script is technically questionable, at least with the current models.
Okay, so if they weren't writing paragraphs of dialogue, what's the more probable, more mundane use case from tabs?
Research. The most probable use, as the commentary points out, is that the Duffer brothers, or let's be honest, more likely their staff writers and assistants, were using ChatGPT as a highly sophisticated, incredibly streamlined search engine.
Okay, that makes sense.
The example given in the sources is straightforward and reflects the show's 1980s setting, asking questions like, what guns did the military use in the 1980s? Or what were the major pop culture events in Indianapolis in 1986?
So it's using AI to synthesize a massive amount of specific factual data instantly, which is exactly what an LLM excels at. It's a research.
And here's the kicker. This is what makes the fans' outrage almost moot in a way. The modern search reality makes avoiding AI outputs incredibly difficult, if not functionally impossible, for anyone doing research online today.
What do you mean?
Even if the writers had just used a traditional search engine, like Google or Bing, those standard search results now fundamentally include AI overviews. They synthesize information for you right at the top of the results page.
So you're saying they would interact with AI-generated research, whether they typed a prompt into ChatGPT or just into a normal search bar? The line has completely blurred.
Completely blurred.
Yeah.
So while the fan anxiety is real, and let's be clear, the optics of open ChatGPT tabs during an AI strike are terrible.
Oh, they're awful.
The reality of the usage might be far more mundane. A sophisticated research assistant, not an author replacement. The real story isn't the tabs themselves, but the exposure of the industry's inevitable silent integration of this technology.
And that specific incident, the Duffer Brothers tabs, is just a microcosm of this larger, almost visceral anxiety that's gripping the entire creative world.
It is, and the sources point out that this fear is actually having a corrosive effect on the content being produced right now.
Okay, let's talk about the emotional distance problem that the source material points out. It ties back directly to how actors and writers actually feel about
The material stresses that Hollywood actors, and by extension the fans who love them, intensely hate AI. There's really no nuance in their position.
It's a very black and white issue for them.
Very. They are described as being incapable of talking about AI without resorting to exploit. The common sentiment is an intense FAI or similar rhetoric. The analysis suggests that this profound lack of emotional distance from the subject is precisely why modern stories about AI are failing creatively.
They're too close to the threat to write about it
They are writing purely out of fear. They lack the necessary detachment, the intellectual curiosity, or even the artistic desire to be truly creative with the subject matter. They just see AI as the enemy that's trying to steal their income and their livelihood.
So the stories they produce become what?
They become reflexive, paranoid, and polemical, rather than compelling narratives that explore the complex philosophical or societal implications of the technology.
And the sources contrast this with stories written back when the technology felt more like a concept or a distant theory, before the threat felt so immediate.
Exactly. They cite competent past AI stories, bringing up shows like Person of Interest, which began around 15 years ago and finished up roughly 10 years ago.
Right.
Those writers and creators had the necessary distance. They could ask the big questions. What to predict murder? What are the limits of surveillance? They explored those concepts without this overwhelming, paralyzing anxiety about losing their paychecks next.
And the result was better art.
The result was genuinely compelling, thought-provoking television. Modern AI stories, by contrast, they tend to focus relentlessly on the destructive, dehumanizing aspect because the writers are just projecting their own immediate economic anxiety onto the narrative.
That's a powerful insight. Fear creates bad art. Now, let's pivot from film and TV to the music industry, because the sources suggest music is acting as a much more advanced bellwether. It's showing us how quickly production models are changing when the technology gets mature.
The music sector is arguably already fully entrenched in. The sources state the industry is essentially cooked because the barriers to high-quality synthetic output are so low now.
And what does that look like in practice?
Well, the technology for AI renditions of songs, taking an existing track and having AI rewrite it in the style of another artist, or changing the genre entirely, it's described as unbelievable in its competence and its speed.
And this rapid shift is fundamentally changed consumer experience and what we perceive as the value of a performer.
It's creating a kind of scarcity in human performance. The sources paint this somewhat nostalgic picture where seeing a live human band may soon become a rarity.
A luxury item.
Exactly. It'll be viewed as a case d'or, which is a French term the sources use to imply a golden case or a treasured item. It means seeing a live band will be viewed much like owning or playing a vinyl record is today.
An expensive, boutique, nostalgic, and specialized experience for connoisseurs.
Right. not the primary mass market way most people consume music.
That's a fascinating cultural shift. Music becomes entirely dematerialized, and human performance becomes a luxury collectible.
And there's this anecdote about an AI artist named Solomon Ray that perfectly illustrates how indistinguishable this technology is becoming from human work in a mass market context.
Remind us of that incredible.
So Solomon Ray is cited as an AI artist, a fully synthetic, non-existent person who somehow managed to top the gospel charts for days. The music produced, which was Christmas themed, was of such professional, high-fidelity quality that if you were listening to it in your car or on the radio, you would just assume it was a legitimate, recognizable human art.
And the celebrity comparison drove that point home about the quality.
It did. The commentary suggested it sounded exactly like a famous, gravelly-voiced human singer, maybe a Chris Stapleton type. But the key takeaway is what happened when it was tested in a general ambient setting.
The grocery store.
The grocery store test. If you heard this music in a supermarket, a shopping mall, or a waiting room, the sources stressed that you would simply not know the difference between the AI output and a human artist. It's competent background music that fills a need without requiring any expensive human overhead.
Which brings us to the core, irresistible driver behind AI adoption, which isn't artistic excellence, it is purely economic, the capitalist imperative.
This is the undeniable, cold, hard truth that underlies all the strikes and all the controversy. If you are a corporation, a label, or a studio, you are fundamentally a very data-driven capitalist company.
Your primary imperative is the bottom line.
It's to deliver the maximum bottom line for your shareholders. If you expect them to care about the artistic endeavor of a human screenwriter or a composer over cost efficiency, the sources argue you are delusional.
So how does the financial comparison actually break down? Give us the metrics that make the switch to AI feel so inevitable.
Well, look at the variable cost. A modern blockbuster might require hundreds of VFX artists, animators, sound mix, all commanding high salaries, overtime union fees, pension contribution, expensive benefits.
And an AI system.
An AI system, once it's trained, costs the marginal price of electricity and the price of the initial licensing or development.
And the output is controllable and scalable.
Infinitely. You can generate 1,000 different soundtracks or 50 different color grades for the same shot in seconds. This means the inevitability is that these labels and production companies will start rapidly moving away from expensive human artists.
Who command massive upfront costs, residuals, and are prone to renegotiate.
Towards things that they can fully streamline, control, and reproduce infinitely. Synthetic AI output. It is simply the most logical, financially sound choice for a capitalist. And
so let's look at the grim prediction for creative workers across the board, not just musicians or screenwriters. What does the labor outlook suggest for the immediate?
It's particularly bleak, especially for those technical creative roles that rely on pattern recognition and execution, like animation or digital background painting.
Why them specifically?
The sources assert that animators are currently being hired with the implicit, if not explicit, understanding that their work is being used, often without compensation or credit, to train the very AI that will later replace them entirely.
That sounds like they're paying for the tools of their own destruction. They're being paid to make themselves obsolete.
It is an incredibly cynical scenario. It's essentially a slow, managed demolition of the creative middle class, a scenario the sources call a slow, sinking ship. Every portfolio piece they produce is simultaneously making the AI better and making their own skills less valuable.
So what defense, if any, is proposed for workers who are caught rapidly changing existential landscape?
The proposed defense is highly pragmatic, though it sounds counterintuitive for a workforce that's striking against the technology.
Which is?
The only way to stay afloat in this slowly sinking ship is to embrace the technology and learn the tool. The argument is that you must learn how to utilize AI yourself. You have to become the AI prompt, the AI supervisor, or the person who can harness the tool faster than the next person.
If you can't beat the system, you have to incorporate its tools into your workflow to remain valuable, at least for the short.
Exactly. You become the valuable intermediary for a little while longer.
And on the macro level, what does this tell us about the future of employment in general, beyond Hollywood?
The prediction is that society is definitively heading toward a post-labor society, a place where the necessity of human work to produce resources is largely obsolete.
So in theory, people won't have to work for the resources they need to survive.
In theory. However, and this is the critical, chilling caveat the sources emphasize, the transition period will be terribly difficult.
Terribly difficult. Why? Why can't we just skip straight to the utopia?
Because the capitalist structures that own the means of production, the AI and the robot, they have no incentive to suddenly share the wealth generated by eliminating all that labor. This isn't a smooth shift where unemployment immediately leads to universal basic income.
No, it's predicted to be a volatile, chaotic period.
Marked by massive unemployment and severe underemployment for a significant, possibly generational period until society eventually figures out a new economic structure, is in essence a very expensive, disruptive period of economic chaos wrapped in a conversation about Hollywood scripts.
That is precisely why the Stranger Things tabs, while they seem so minor in themselves, provided such a massive spark.
They expose the fear that this difficult transition is starting right now in the creative field.
Okay, let's pivot from writing and animation to act and the union's response to this very specific type of threat. The source material introduces a fascinating concept, the fully realized AI performer, or the synthetic.
Yes, the terminology itself signals a major shift. We're not talking about deepfakes or simple CGI models anymore. We're talking about a fully integrated, marketable persona.
The word synthetics sounds like something straight out of Blade Runner or Westworld.
It does. And it signals that this technology has crossed the threshold from science fiction to business reality.
And the specific example they cite to make this concept feel really concrete is the performer Tilly Norwood.
Correct. Tilly Norwood is cited as an example of an AI performer being actively marketed as the next big thing, capable of taking on lead roles in major productions without ever stepping onto a physical set.
So how is SAG-AFTRA, the actors union, the organization that represents, Jennifer Lawrence and Viola Davis, how are they planning to fight this existential?
The union strategy, which is being championed by its chief negotiator Duncan Crabtree Ireland, revolves around a very old-school, tried-and-true labor concept.
Which is?
Price-fixing the synthetic. They understand that if studios can pay pennies for Tilly Norwood, the human actor is extinct.
So the goal is to eliminate the financial incentive for using AI in the first place.
Exactly. The union is attempting to set a mandatory, non-negotiable price floor. The proposed cost is that Tilly Norwood would cost the studio just as much as hiring a real high-caliber human actor. The sources cite examples like Emma Stone or Viola Davis, suggesting a fee in the high six figures or millions per project.
The union's logic is perfectly clear. If the employer gains no cost savings by using an AI-generated performer, they will theoretically be dissuaded from using them and will choose the human actor every single time, preserving human jobs.
That is the hope. That is the logical industrial defense. A lack of cost savings should dissuade employers from displacing real living actors. But here is where the analysis in the source material gets very insightful. It suggests that the studios are not looking at a simple cost equation anymore. They are factoring in a host of other variables that shift the advantage entirely to the synthetic, even if the salary is price fixed.
So why wouldn't a studio choose the human if the salary cost is the same? This is where we need to get into the synthetic's advantage.
The advantage is not about performance quality, which will eventually be indistinguishable. It's about risk management and total control.
Ah.
The sources point out that we are moving toward what they call a post-celebrity society, one dominated by thousands of micro-influencers and viral personalities, and fewer true, monolithic movie stars who can carry a $200 million film.
And in that landscape?
In this landscape, controllable synthetics become exponentially more appealing to risk-averse corporations.
So what are the risks inherent in hiring a human celebrity that an AI synthetic instantly eliminates?
Unpredictability. A human actor, especially a high-profile one, is a walking, talking PR disaster just waiting to happen. A synthetic performer cannot get in a car crash at 3 a.m. They can't speak out of turn at a political rally. They can't post something controversial on social media that alienates an entire demographic.
That's unless they're programmed to.
Unless they are programmed to do so by the studio itself, meaning the studio fully controls the risk profile.
So if we connect this to the bigger picture, that lack of PR risk becomes an incredibly powerful, non-monetary benefit that dramatically improves the studio's bottom line stability.
It removes the human element of chaos. Absolutely. When you hire a human celebrity, you are paying for their star power, yes, but you are also inheriting their potential for drama, their contractual demands, their need for, long-term psychological support or vacation time. The studios fundamentally prefer streamlined, 24/7, risk-free control.
And that control is worth more than the potential salary savings the union is trying to eliminate.
It's worth much more.
The source provides a fantastic, highly memorable hypothetical to illustrate this exact studio dilemma. The choice between Tilly Norwood and a real, high-profile human like Jennifer Lawrence. This really clarifies the stakes.
It's a very effective scenario because it uses a highly bankable star to show that even the biggest names aren't immune to the studio's desire for control. So imagine you are the head of a major studio and you're producing a massive franchise installment. You have two choices for a major role.
Okay, start with choice A. Tilly Norwood.
Choice A is Tilly Norwood. the synthetic. She is always on time because she clocks in the moment the animators in London start their work. She never demands script changes. She always follows the script perfectly. She will never get sick or age or cause a PR headache that tanks your stock price.
Okay, perfect. Now, choice B is the major human celebrity.
And Jennifer Lawrence, unfortunately, has just gone on a major high-profile talk show the day before your $100 million movie premieres, and in a moment of candid discussion, declared that she hates dogs.
Oh, that's beautiful in its specificity.
Now, the movie you are releasing just happens to be Air Bud Part 5.
Right. The cost of that human unpredictability. The massive, unquantifiable damage to brand partnerships, the immediate fan backlash from a major dog-loving demographic, the lost revenue, it's immense.
It might take the studio months to recover from that one human slip-up. So the studio will choose the predictable, controllable performer, Tilly Norwood, regardless of whether the fixed salary price is exactly the same as Lawrence's.
So the price-fixing strategy, therefore, is fundamentally flawed.
It's flawed because it ignores the studio's real priority, risk management.
That paints a very clear picture of why the union strategy, though it's logical in old labor terms, might ultimately fail to protect human jobs. But now we have to move to the darkest and perhaps most cynical reason an executive might actually resist this inevitable automation. The sources take us from profit margins to pure power dynamics.
This is the section of the material that raises some really serious cultural and ethical questions about the nature of power in Hollywood, forcing us to confront the uncomfortable reality that sometimes human corruption can outweigh capitalist efficiency.
We're pivoting now to a specific non-economic. An executive might actively resist fully automated performer, and it highlights a dark reality of Hollywood culture that the sources are very clear still exists today. So we need to handle this with the gravity the subject demands.
From the perspective of certain studio honchos and powerful executives, the immediate cost-saving benefits of synthetics suddenly clash with a deeply ingrained exploitative aspect of their power structure.
Which is?
They lose the casting couch with AI.
Meaning Tilly Norwood, the synthetic performer who is efficient, predictable, and risk-free, also eliminates a major form of coercive control.
Exactly. The source material is very blunt about this. Tilly Norwood is not going to exchange sexual favors or be coerced into doing so in exchange for roles or career advancement.
And this raises an important question, which is central to the analysis.
Does the human desire to maintain this specific exploitative power dynamic, this control over vulnerable human talent and the resulting gratification, does that outweigh the massive long-term cost savings offered by full automation and PR?
And for some executives, the source implies that the answer might be a terrifying yes, that power and personal gratification can often be prioritized over purely financial profit margin.
The pursuit of power and the maintenance of a certain type of predatory culture can act as a strange, unforeseen human resistance to technological efficiency. And this leads to some truly disturbing speculation from the sources about the necessary next evolution of AI technology that would need to occur to fully secure executive buy-in.
The dark conjecture about the ultimate synthetics.
The disturbing conjecture suggests that the final necessary step for full executive adoption of synthetic might be the merging of the highly advanced sex robot with the creative capacities of AI. The idea is to create a synthetic that can act the role and provide the type of human availability and exploitation that certain executives seek.
So, a hypothetical Tilly Norwood version 2.0 would allow executives to use a synthetic cheap and maintain the predatory, exploitative practice that they currently value.
It's a shocking proposition, but it follows the cynical logic of the source material. If the human executive's primary resistance to AI is the loss of personal exploitative power, then technology will eventually be built to restore that power, leading to rapid total adoption.
So the implication is that studios are willing to spend massive amounts of R&D money on AI sex doll if it means they don't have to give up the core coercive aspect of the casting couch.
That's the chilling suggestion.
We have to pause here and stress the source's assertion that the casting couch is absolutely not an issue of the past. It persists actively in modern Hollywood.
That is a critical point the sources make very strongly. The material cautions against viewing this as some historical artifact. For anyone who believes this practice ended with the #MeToo movement or belongs only in the black and white era of old Hollywood, they need only look at recent history.
And the source uses a very detailed and specific anecdote to confirm the persistence and transactional nature of this practice.
It does. Let's detail the Charlotte Kirk controversy, framed strictly through the lens of how the source material uses it to prove the continuation of this power dynamic.
Okay.
Charlotte Kirk, an actress, came under public controversy several years ago after it was revealed she had been involved in exchanges with multiple executives and directors involving sexual favors in exchange for the promise of roles.
And the sources use this example not for salacious detail, but to show that this system of exchange is absolutely active, not just historical.
Correct. And in a bizarre, dark twist, this system sometimes even produces a successful outcome for the executive involved, which reinforces the power imbalance.
A tragic reinforcement.
It is. Kirk became engaged to the director Neil Marshall, who is known for films like The Descent and Game of Thrones episode. The source material notes that he subsequently vowed that he would only make films with her from then on.
And this is cited as a literal example of a successful casting couch out.
Yes, where the executive maintains the relationship and delivers on the promise of career advancement, thereby cementing the idea within that ecosystem that this is a valid, if abusive, path to success.
And the most specific, frankly damning piece of evidence cited in the material involves her text exchanges with a major figure, Brett Ratner. This gives us a direct, unvarnished look into the raw transactional nature of the practice that executives are so loath to lose to automation.
Yes. The source material details embarrassing, highly specific text exchanges that became public. The context was that Brett Ratner had allegedly pawned her off onto an executive. The exchange confirms the explicit transactional arrangement being conducted.
What did it say?
Kirk's text to Ratner essentially confirms that she upheld her end of the bargain and then demanded the promised career return.
The actual text, as cited in the sources, laid out the demand clearly.
It was chillingly direct. Kirk's text said, "Okay, I had sex with the dude. When am I getting the roles?"
That's it.
It strips away any pretense of romance or mentorship and reduces the exchange to a raw business transaction rooted in exploitation.
That context fundamentally reframes the conversation about AI. It's not just about executives losing money, or for some, it's about maintaining coercive power structures that are tied to their sense of self-worth or entitlement.
It shows that for certain deeply entrenched executives, the loss of human talent means the loss of a specific type of exploitative control that no amount of efficiency or cost savings can truly replace in their...
Let's close this section by discussing Hollywood's remarkable tendency towards self-satire, which, ironically, the sources argue, serves to minimize or normalize this very abuse in its own context.
This is a really sophisticated defense mechanism. Hollywood is unbelievably good at satire. They can create perfectly accurate representation of the most egregious, abusive types of producers.
Right, the source gives the classic example of G-Man from Tropic.
The abusive, cartoonishly over-the-top producer. But the way these abuses are presented often functions as a subtle form of normalization within the broader cultural narrative.
How does that normalization work specifically when it comes to the story of the young ingenue actress trying to make?
In Hollywood's own narratives, the ingenue actress is often framed not as a victim of coercion, but as someone who knows what she wants and is willing to do whatever she has to do to get ahead.
It's framed as ambition, not abuse.
Exactly. The framing avoids the language of power imbalance, of coercion, of abuse. The narrative often becomes, this woman came from the Midwest, she was savvy, smart, and ambitious enough to navigate the system, which usually meant entertaining a bunch of lecherous dudes who lacked moral character. It wasn't framed as abuse, it was reframed and celebrated as shrewd, strategic ambition.
That subtle narrative shift is incredibly powerful. It transforms a coercive act into a necessary rite of passage, or even a sign of exceptional willpower.
And this cultural tendency helps the practice persist, even in the face of massive public pressure and the technological disruption that threatens to make the human actor obsolete. The culture defends the system, even when that system is grossly inefficient.
Okay, let's unpack all of this and bring it back. We started this deep dive with suspicious browser tabs on a Stranger Things computer, a tiny technological error. And by following the cold economic logic of AI adopt, we ended up analyzing the future of human labor, the limits of union strategy, and the darkest enduring secret.
It's a perfect illustration of how technology doesn't just change method. It exposes underlying, sometimes horrible truth about the power structures of an entire industry. The AI controversy is really the catalyst, not the problem.
So what are the three key takeaways we synthesized from dense material?
Okay, number one, fan vigilance is now an industry watchdog and a force multiplier. The intensity and dedication of modern fandom have transformed the audience into an accidental but highly effective oversight. They're capable of magnifying minor discoveries like open browser tabs into major controversies that genuinely influence industry debate and force public scrutiny.
Right. Takeaway number two.
AI usage in creative fields is already here, and it's inevitable, beginning as a ghost in the machine. It's likely starting as a sophisticated research and augmentation tool helping writers look up historical details or streamline fact-check rather than outright full creative generation. However, this initial quiet integration signals the irreversible start of the shift toward a post-labor creative society, even if that transition is going to be economically.
And the final take.
Number three, the battle between synthetics like Tilly Norwood and human actors, fundamentally about control, not cost. The union strategy of price fixing, it focuses on the wrong variable. The true studio bottom line is increasingly driven by PR, risk management, and predictability, making the human actors' unpredictability and potential for scandal their real, unquantifiable cost. Synthetics offer perfect risk-free control.
Which brings us to our final provocative thought. The source material suggests a deeply cynical, yet perhaps accurate conclusion about the forces that truly shape human culture and labor.
Yes, the fear of AI displacing human creativity and labor is entirely real, and it's well-founded. But the sources suggest that a key factor slowing its total takeover might not be artistic integrity or superior human performance or even the power of union strength.
No, instead, the final bizarre resistance point might be the human executives' need to maintain deeply entrenched, non-economic, and often abusive power.
So here's the question for you. If the industry could somehow solve the casting couch problem with AI, if the sex robot merged with the creative synthetic, removing that final human obstacle, would the transition to a post-labor creative society become even faster and more complete? Would that remove the last human barrier to total technological automation?
It's a chilling thought that forces us to question where our societal priorities lie: efficiency and profit or exploitative power. The answer dictates the speed of our automation.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into Hollywood's strange future. We hope this gives you a clearer view of the hidden forces shaping tomorrow's entertainment landscape. We'll see you next time.